My beloved, you asked where I went. Maybe not with words, but in your heart. In the quiet hours when your prayers seemed to float into nothing. In the middle of a conversation where the room fell still and no answer came. In the moments when you reached out and all you felt was your own breath. You wondered if I had stepped back, if you had done something wrong, if I was disappointed, if I had moved on. And I know you didn't say it out loud, but the silence grew heavy enough to sound like rejection. So let me begin here, with a truth your soul was too tired to ask for. My silence was never distance. You've been interpreting my stillness through the lens of absence. But I never left. Not once. Not for a breath. I was not standing far away waiting for you to earn my voice back. I wasn't withholding love as a consequence. I wasn't measuring your performance and finding you unworthy of an answer. My silence wasn't punishment. It was protection. It was presence wrapped in quiet. It was me holding you without the need for words. It was me surrounding you while you rebuilt in the dark. You see, there are seasons where my voice comes through like thunder, clear and unmistakable. And then there are seasons when all I do is stay, when I don't speak, but I remain, when I stop moving things outside of you so that something deeper can be healed inside, when I let your questions rise, not to torment you, but to teach you that your faith can survive without instant clarity, that your relationship with me doesn't have to depend on constant feedback. That silence you felt, it wasn't a void. It was the space where I was strengthening what was weak, the place where I was quiet enough for you to hear yourself again. You thought I had gone missing, but I was giving you room to breathe in the answers that wouldn't come in a rush. I was there, sitting with you in the wait, anchoring you when nothing else held, watching you choose to trust me even when you couldn't hear me. That trust meant more than all the words you ever prayed, because what I was doing in the silence couldn't be taught through noise. I was showing you how to stand even when you felt nothing. I was helping you realize that my love isn't proven by signs. It's proven by presence. And sometimes presence doesn't sound like a voice. It feels like breath, like stillness, like survival in the wilderness, like a light that doesn't shout but refuses to go out. You were never alone in that silence. You weren't forgotten. You weren't being tested to the point of breaking. You were being held quietly. And I know that kind of holding felt foreign. You were used to emotion, movement, clarity. But now you know what it means to be kept, even when you're confused. To be loved even when you doubt. To be steady even when heaven doesn't feel loud. You thought silence meant separation. But what if it meant something else entirely? What if it meant trust? What if I was teaching you that my presence doesn't require performance? That you don't have to feel me to be with me? That you don't need constant reassurance to know that you're still mine? That's the deeper faith I've been leading you into. The kind that doesn't need fireworks to believe in fire. The kind that doesn't collapse when I speak softly, or not at all. The kind that knows, deep in its bones, that even my silence is full of me. So let's start here. Let's begin again, not with noise, but with the knowledge that I never left. That your name never left my heart. That every tear you cried in that silence didn't fall into a void, it landed in my hands. That the nights you felt furthest from me were the ones I wrapped closest around you. That the very absence you felt was actually me being still enough for your soul to finally rest. I don't hide to punish you. I don't withdraw to confuse you. I remain close, even when I don't speak. And now I'm speaking again. Not because I came back, but because you're ready to hear what couldn't be spoken in the noise. You've learned what the silence meant. You've survived what tried to use it against you. And now you're standing in something stronger than certainty. You're standing in faith. And I'm still here. I always was. There are things I do in silence that can't be done when everything is loud. Some kinds of healing only happen in the stillness. There are roots I mend when the noise settles. There are fears I untangle when the distractions fade. There are places inside you that only open when you finally stop reaching for quick answers and start listening for deeper truths. And that's what I was doing. I wasn't quiet because I was far. I was quiet because I was near, and holding you in a way you didn't yet understand. I know how much you wanted clarity. I saw your heart beg for confirmation. You thought, if I could just hear something, anything, maybe I'd feel grounded again. And I want you to know I heard that. I felt your longing. But I also saw what that longing was doing to you. It was making your trust dependent on my volume. It was tying your sense of security to my response speed. And I love you too much to let your confidence in me be built on constant answers. I want something deeper for you, something steadier, something unshakable, so I stayed silent. Not out of distance, but out of design. There are truths that only take root when the noise fades. Things like, I am still good even when I am quiet. You are still mine even when you feel unsure. My love doesn't waver with your understanding. My presence doesn't withdraw when you stop feeling it. These truths don't grow in atmospheres of certainty. They grow in trust, and trust is what I was growing in you all along. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't absence. It was trust formation. I was letting your roots deepen, not in what I do, but in who I am. I was giving you space to let go of the performance-based faith you didn't even realize you were holding on to. The kind of faith that says, if I feel him, then I'm safe. The kind that measures love by sensation. But what I want for you is real intimacy. And real intimacy is built in moments where nothing changes externally, but everything is shifting within. I never stopped being present. I just stepped back from speaking the way you were used to hearing. I didn't leave. I just changed the way I was with you. Because what you needed wasn't another answer. It was rest. What you needed wasn't another direction. It was to be reminded that I am still God, even when I don't say what you expect. What you needed wasn't movement. It was to know you're still held when everything stands still. And you were. Every single day. Every moment you felt unseen, I was watching over you. Every time you cried in frustration, I was near enough to catch every tear. You thought I was doing nothing, but I was holding everything together. Quietly, patiently, without needing you to notice. This is the kind of love I offer. Not one that always fixes things on your timeline, but one that never leaves, even when it's quiet. Especially when it's quiet. And now that you've walked through that silence, you can finally feel the weight of what I was doing. Now, you can look back and see the threads I was weaving when you thought nothing was happening. The strength I was building. The courage I was restoring. The old fears I was letting die without you having to fight them yourself. You wanted a loud answer. I gave you a gentle presence. You wanted a breakthrough. I gave you roots. You wanted signs. I gave you stillness that taught you how to stay. And that stillness is what you'll carry now. It's the kind that doesn't get shaken when the world demands proof. It's the kind of peace that knows my silence is never abandonment. It's always intention. You weren't waiting in the dark while I watched from a distance. You were in the dark, but I was the one beside you, guarding the door, keeping the weight from crushing you, whispering truth, even when you couldn't hear it consciously. I was pouring strength into your spine. I was weaving stability into your soul. I was calming your nervous system in ways your mind didn't recognize. And all of that happened because you didn't run when I got quiet. You stayed. You breathed. You let me be God even when I didn't speak the way you wanted. And that changed you. maybe more than anything else ever could. Because now you know. Your peace doesn't depend on my volume. Your confidence doesn't depend on constant reassurance. You've tasted what it means to be kept, and that knowing cannot be taken from you. This is the kind of faith that will carry you into what's next. The kind that doesn't panic in silence. The kind that doesn't require signs to know I'm near. The kind that walks slowly, not because it's unsure, but because it knows I'm present. The kind that doesn't ask, "Are you still here?" because it lives from the certainty that I never left. So let me say it again. For the part of you that still wonders, still watches, still waits for the sound, my silence was never distance. It was how I held you in the dark without breaking the peace. It was how I gave you rest without requiring your attention. It was how I made sure that when I speak again, you'll know the difference. And now you do. You spent so much time searching for confirmation, wanting to be sure, wanting to know, wanting to hear something that would settle the ache. You were taught, perhaps without realizing it, that faith must always come with feedback. That if I love you, I will speak. That if you are walking the right path, I will confirm it loudly. And so when all you got was stillness, you asked yourself if something had gone wrong, if your heart had closed, if your prayer had missed me. But now you know what felt like silence was never rejection. It was refinement. In the quiet, I was teaching you something deeper than recognition. I was teaching you discernment, the kind that doesn't depend on emotional highs, the kind that doesn't chase external signs, the kind that listens not with ears but with spirit. You see, in the absence of obvious answers, your spiritual senses grew sharper. You didn't realize it then, but in every moment you chose to stay near, even without the clarity you were desperate for. You were learning how to feel me in the stillness, how to sense me in the delay, how to recognize my movement even when there were no words attached to it. And that is something only silence can teach. You thought I was preparing something for you, and I was. But more than that, I was preparing you for something. I wasn't just changing your situation. I was changing your capacity. I was stretching your ability to recognize me without the usual markers. I was increasing your resilience, not so you'd learn to do life without me, but so you'd stop doubting my presence when I chose to move differently. I was building spiritual authority in you, not the kind that comes from knowledge, but the kind that comes from knowing. You now carry a kind of faith that is steady, not because everything makes sense, but because you've already stood in the dark and didn't walk away. That history matters. That time when you didn't hear me, but still believed I was near. That's the foundation we're standing on now. It's not thin, it's not emotional, it's weighty, it holds. And that's why you're no longer easily shaken. You feel the pull of chaos around you, but it doesn't take your breath the way it used to. You hear the voices of doubt, but they don't get to define your pace anymore. Because the silence you once resented became the sanctuary where you met a version of me that the noise could never reveal. You didn't just survive the quiet, you were transformed by it. I want you to understand how sacred that is. Some people never slow down long enough to meet me like this. They depend on activity, on volume, on proof. But you, because you stayed, because you let me work in stillness, I was able to place something in you that cannot be manufactured. It's not charisma, it's not energy, it's depth. Depth that can only come from walking with me when I have nothing to say and still refusing to leave. You've learned how to trust me without guarantees, how to walk forward without full visibility, how to rest, not because the path is easy, but because you finally believe I'm in the path. That's not weakness. That's maturity, that's authority. That's what I was always building, even when it looked like nothing was happening at all. And now, you carry that authority with you. You carry it in the way you speak, calm, not frantic. You carry it in the way you listen, deeply, without needing to interrupt. You carry it in the way you wait, without rushing to fill the silence. That kind of presence changes the room. That kind of steadiness calms storms around you. That kind of peace is contagious. You've stopped looking for signs because you became one. A sign that you don't need to always feel me to follow me. A sign that silence doesn't mean abandonment. A sign that presence can be quiet and still be complete. You're now someone who knows how to stay even when the lights go out. And that's the kind of person I can trust with deeper things. That's the kind of person I can send into places that others find uncomfortable. That's the kind of heart I can whisper to and know it won't panic if I'm quiet for a while. Because you no longer need constant affirmation to feel loved. You no longer need clarity to walk faithfully. You no longer measure my presence by noise, but by nearness. This is what spiritual maturity feels like. Not more noise, but more trust. Not more signs, but more sensitivity. Not more striving, but more rest. You are not walking in uncertainty now. You are walking in confidence, the kind that doesn't need explanation. You may not hear me as often in the ways you once did, but now you know. My silence never meant absence. It meant depth. It meant readiness. It meant love in its most still and powerful form. And now you walk in that stillness with me, unshaken, unhurried, undivided. What's coming next between us won't look like what came before. You've walked with me through silence, and now that you've been changed by it, our relationship is ready to shift into something deeper. You're not returning to the same kind of conversation we used to have. This time, you're not desperate for volume. You're no longer chasing signs. You've learned to hear me in the absence of sound, and because of that, you are now able to hear me in a way few ever learn, not with your ears, but with your life. You're not just listening for answers anymore. You're living in alignment with my voice. You don't need daily instructions to feel connected. You've learned how to live from the awareness of my nearness, not from a dependency on my feedback. That's maturity. That's friendship. That's communion. The silence stripped away the noise, but it didn't remove me. It revealed what was in the way, the anxious need to be reassured, the fear of abandonment, the internal pressure to prove yourself even in prayer. All of that surfaced in the silence, and you didn't run from it. You stayed with me in it. And because of that, what we have now is real, not reactive, not dependent on external peace, but rooted in something deeper. You're no longer trying to maintain a connection. You're walking in one. This is why the way I speak to you will shift. Not because I love you less, but because you no longer need me to shout. You're tuned now. Sensitive. Your spirit is calibrated. A whisper is enough. A pause is enough. A moment of stillness is no longer threatening. It's sacred. That's how I'll guide you from now on. Not just through words, but through knowing. Through inner awareness, through sudden clarity that arrives without noise, through peace that interrupts the pressure, through conviction that feels less like correction and more like invitation. You used to question everything. You used to doubt your own sense of direction. You used to wonder if your decisions would make me pull away. But now you know. I don't leave when you're uncertain. I don't withhold myself when you're learning. I don't walk away when you make a wrong turn. I walk with you. And now you walk with me, not from fear, but from trust. Not for perfection, but from relationship. The time of silence was never a wall between us. It was an open door to a different room, a quieter one, a steadier one, one where you no longer have to earn your seat at the table, one where you stop asking, "Am I doing enough?" and start remembering, "I'm already loved." And in this room, the conversation is different. It doesn't begin with need, it begins with presence. That's where we are now. Presence. You don't need to perform anymore when you talk to me. You don't have to posture your heart or try to say the right thing. You don't have to fill the silence with words just to prove you're still listening. Now, silence isn't absence. It's invitation. It's a welcome. It's space for us to simply be. Sometimes we'll speak. Sometimes we'll just sit. And neither is more holy than the other. You no longer need to analyze which moments are meaningful. They all are, because you're no longer here for information. You're here for me. And I am here for you. Now the trust we built in silence becomes the foundation of everything ahead. Every decision, every moment, every conversation you have with me and with others will be shaped by the peace you found when there were no clear answers. You're not looking for clarity at every turn. You've learned to walk with confidence even in mystery. That's what makes you stable. That's what makes you wise. That's what makes your connection to me unshakable. This is the kind of communion I dreamed of having with you, one that doesn't rise and fall with your emotions, one that doesn't depend on spiritual highs, one that doesn't collapse when things grow quiet. What we have now is real, rooted, and lasting, because you let the silence teach you instead of letting it turn you bitter. You let it deepen you, and now I can entrust you with things that require stillness, that require discernment, that require someone who listens beyond language. So don't fear the moments ahead where things grow quiet again. Don't assume something's wrong just because the noise stops. Remember what you've learned. Come back to what we built. The silence isn't a sign of distance. It's a sign of depth. It means you're trusted. It means you've been changed. It means we no longer need noise to stay close. We just need to remain present. And I will be here, still speaking, still guiding, still near. Whether the words come daily or not at all, nothing has shifted between us. We're closer now than ever. Not because you hear me more often, but because you no longer panic when you don't. This is the fruit of the silence. A new kind of intimacy, a new kind of hearing, a new kind of faith. And from this place, we'll move not faster, but freer, not louder, but deeper, not by force, but by trust. You're ready now, not to return to what was, but to live from what is. A rhythm that doesn't require sound to stay sacred, a connection that doesn't need fixing, a love that doesn't need proof. You and I, we are talking again, but this time it's quieter, and somehow it's more alive than ever. Now that we've walked through the silence together, I want to show you something sacred, something you may not have believed before this season. You can hear me now, even when I don't speak. You can feel my direction, even when I don't draw a map. You can sense my love, even when it doesn't arrive wrapped in emotions or obvious signs. Because now, finally, you've learned to recognize me from the inside. Before, you waited for me in the sky. You expected lightning. You listened for thunder. You looked to others to confirm what you already suspected in your own spirit. You leaned heavily on outside voices, not because you didn't trust me, but because you didn't fully trust your ability to hear me. And I understood. I stayed patient. I kept speaking until your heart learned to calm down, until your soul stopped asking others to validate what I was already whispering within you. And that's the miracle of this season. You no longer need permission to believe what I show you. You no longer doubt every quiet intuition. You've stopped dismissing your discernment just because it comes in silence. You trust it now. You trust me now, because you know where to find me, not just above, not just around, but within. Yes, I am the God of signs and wonders. Yes, I speak in dreams, through scripture, through others, but I'm also the God who lives in you, the voice that steadies your thoughts, the whisper that interrupts your spirals, the presence that fills the air when you choose to be still instead of perform. And that is where your deepest confidence will grow, not from noise, but from knowing. I know how hard it was to reach this place, how often you second-guessed yourself, how many times you felt the stirring and asked, "Is that really you, God? Or is that just me?" And I never mocked that question. I welcomed it, because every time you asked, you came closer. Every time you leaned in, your heart got quieter. And in that quiet, my voice began to feel less foreign. It became familiar, safe, clear. And now, you don't chase it, you carry it. That's why I'm not worried about your next steps. That's why I'm not rushing to send you signs. Because I know that you'll recognize me, even if I never raise my voice. You've walked with me in the absence of noise. You've seen me in the ordinary. You've heard me in the breath, between questions. And that kind of faith can't be shaken, not by delay, not by confusion, not by others who question your clarity. You don't have to defend your connection to me. You just have to keep living from it. You're not fragile anymore. You're not unsure. You're not walking on eggshells wondering if you missed something. You know how to return. You know how to reset. You know how to pause, breathe, and find me in the space between thoughts. That's what makes you unshakable now. Not your strength, but your awareness. Not your certainty about outcomes, but your confidence in my presence. You can hear me now when you walk into a room and your body tenses for no reason. That's me, alerting your spirit before your mind understands. You can hear me now when a phrase repeats quietly in your heart. That's not your imagination. That's me bringing peace where there once was pressure. You can hear me in the clarity that comes after a long pause, in the weight that lifts when you release what isn't yours, in the tears that rise without words, all of it. Me, all of it real. And this new sensitivity is a gift. Not everyone will understand it. Not everyone will honor it. But that doesn't make it any less holy. You don't need the approval of others to walk in what I gave you. You don't need an audience to validate the authority you carry. I gave it to you in silence. And in silence, you learn to hold it without needing to prove it. You're no longer waiting for a moment to begin again. You already did. The moment you stopped needing me to explain everything and started believing that I was still good, even when I was quiet, that was the beginning. That was the shift. And now, you live differently. You speak with more weight. You listen with more wisdom. You move with more purpose because you're not trying to figure out if I'm with you. You know that I am. That's the kind of relationship I always wanted with you. Not one where you beg for signs, but one where you recognize my presence so deeply, no one can talk you out of it. Not one where your identity rises and falls with your emotional state, but one where you're anchored in truth that doesn't require applause, anchored in love that doesn't need volume, anchored in the knowing that even in my silence, you are never abandoned. So trust yourself now, not because you're infallible, but because I'm within you. Trust what you feel when peace settles. Trust what you sense when something feels off. Trust what rises in you when you enter stillness and discover you're not alone. That's me. That's us. That's the voice you thought was gone, but was only being refined. Now it's clear. You can hear me, Noel, and you'll never doubt that again. Now that you hear me from the inside, calm, steady, without chasing signs or voices, I want you to know this. What was cultivated in the quiet wasn't just for your survival. It was for your calling. You didn't walk through silence just to be stronger. You walked through it so that you would carry something deeper into the world. Something the world desperately needs. Something words alone can't offer. Something only presence can release. What you now carry will guide others. Not by preaching, not by noise, not by explanation, but by the quiet weight of your life. People will feel the difference before they understand it. They'll rest around you without knowing why. They'll breathe easier in your presence, not because you fix anything, but because you don't try to control what doesn't belong to you. You've learned the rare gift of staying anchored even when others panic. You've learned to live without forcing clarity, and that steadiness now becomes a sanctuary for others. Don't underestimate what your silence taught you. Don't think it was just for your healing. I was planting in you what I could not place in noise: peace that holds, clarity that doesn't need to convince, confidence that doesn't need to be loud. You used to feel invisible when I was quiet. Now you've become visible, not through striving, but by simply being someone who doesn't collapse in the absence of answers. That kind of strength is rare, and it speaks even when you don't. Your very presence will become a mirror for people's restlessness, not to shame them, but to show them what's possible. To show them there's a way to live that doesn't demand performance. To show them that God can be found even when it feels like He's not saying anything. You'll offer something holy, a safe place where others can stop performing, even for me. You're not being sent out to fix anyone. You're being sent to carry what you found in the silence. My peace, my pace, my presence. You'll walk into rooms that still echo with anxiety, and you'll be the one who doesn't rush to fill the space. You'll sit with people who are desperate for answers, and you won't offer formulas. You'll offer stillness. You'll listen differently now. Speak with less urgency. Move with more trust. And in doing so, you'll teach others without even trying that silence is not punishment. It's invitation. You no longer carry the need to be impressive. You carry something better: permission. You've become a living permission slip. You allow others to pause, to not know, to release the pressure to hear from God in ways that mimic performance. You'll show them, simply by being yourself, that my voice is never truly gone. It's just sometimes speaking in a frequency the noise won't allow. You'll guide others not by volume, but by consistency. Not by charisma, but by clarity. Not by being the loudest, but by being the most faithful to stillness. Because now you don't fear silence anymore, you recognize it as sacred space. And that recognition will create room for others to meet me too. You're no longer someone who waits for a word. You're someone who is a word, a message, a living echo of what I whispered in the dark. And yes, people may question your quiet strength. Some won't understand why you don't strive the way you used to, why you don't panic when the plan isn't clear, why you rest when others are rushing. Let them question. Let your fruit answer, let your peace speak. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how deeply you've changed. The ones meant to receive what you carry will recognize it. The ones who don't, I'll handle that. I didn't call you to be understood by everyone. I called you to be available for me to move through, whenever, however, quietly or boldly. And right now, that means being faithful to the pace we've built. Not returning to frantic energy just because others expect urgency. Not filling the silence just because you feel it. Staying in the calm. Protecting the sanctuary. Becoming a witness that a life led by stillness is not empty. It's full of me. What you gained in silence is not fragile. It will hold, even in the face of busyness, even in pressure, even in misunderstanding. That's how you know it's real. You don't have to maintain it. It maintains you. And that is what others will feel when they walk with you now. They will encounter someone who doesn't flinch in the quiet, who doesn't confuse delay with denial, who doesn't rush to escape what they now understand to be sacred. This is your ministry now, to carry the calm, to walk in peace, to be a living contradiction to the noise. You don't need a title, you don't need a microphone. You only need to be faithful to what the silence gave you, a voice that doesn't shake just because it isn't loud. A presence that comforts just by staying present. A message that says, God stayed with me when I heard nothing, and now I'll stay with you. And I will continue to speak, not always through words, but always through you. Now that you no longer fear the quiet, I want you to understand the weight you carry because of it This isn't just a personal breakthrough, it's an imparted strength. What feels like calm to you now is, in fact, authority. And not the kind that needs to be announced, not the kind that comes with titles or recognition, but the kind that changes rooms, the kind that steadies others without them even knowing why. You used to see your stillness as fragility. You used to think that not reacting meant you weren't engaged, that your soft approach meant you lacked boldness. But I see it differently. I see the courage it took to stop rushing, the bravery it took to pause, the spiritual maturity it required to no longer demand answers at every turn. That restraint wasn't retreat, it was trust. That stillness wasn't silence, it was strength. And now your quiet carries a kind of power the world doesn't know how to name, but they will feel it. When you walk into spaces where tension fills the air, you won't need to speak first. Your posture will already say what needs to be said. When people look to you for reaction, you won't perform. You'll hold your center. And in doing so, you'll remind them that stability is possible. Not because you control outcomes, but because you've surrendered the need to control altogether. That's what makes your presence different now. You've stopped needing to prove yourself, and that alone sets you apart. This is the authority that comes from someone who no longer confuses urgency with purpose. Someone who knows that waiting is not wasting, that not every battle is hers to fight, that discernment is not measured by reaction speed, but by alignment. You no longer jump at every noise, you no longer flinch at every shift, and that groundedness gives you reach. Your influence isn't in how many people hear you, it's in how people feel when they're around you. And now, they'll feel safety. They'll feel peace. They'll feel a kind of invitation back to themselves. You'll be a reminder that not every storm requires panic, that not every silence is a crisis, that not every delay means something's wrong. Because you've lived through all of that, and you've come out whole. You won't need to defend this new way of being. You'll just live it. You'll model it, you'll protect it. Some won't understand at first. Some will challenge it. Some will ask, why don't you react like you used to? Let them ask. Let your peace answer. Let your consistency speak for itself. You don't owe a defense for the freedom you fought to preserve. You only owe faithfulness to the one who gave it to you. And I will keep confirming it, not always with applause, but with fruit. Fruit that shows up in the way your words land with gentleness but clarity, in the way your presence calms the people who once used to exhaust you, in the way your body no longer tenses when plans change, in the way your heart doesn't spiral at the first sign of uncertainty. All of that is evidence that what we built in the silence is real, and it's yours to carry now. You're not small because you're soft. You're not unseen because you're quiet. You're not ineffective because you no longer push. You're aligned. And that alignment will guide you into rooms where chaos used to reign. It will draw others, not to your personality, but to your peace. And you won't need to lead with force. You'll lead with presence. You'll lead by staying true to the stillness that shaped you. Even now, as you read this, your spirit knows this is true. You feel the difference. You no longer crave the noise. You no longer seek performance. You want depth. And you're finally willing to live without being loud. That's not the absence of courage. It's the evidence of it. Because the most dangerous thing about a person who knows they're loved is that they no longer try to earn it, and you, beloved, no longer perform for belonging. You are settled, and the world needs more people like that. So here's what I want you to remember. The way you carry yourself now is not weakness, it's witness. It tells a story of someone who didn't run when God grew quiet, someone who stayed when it would have been easier to fill the silence, someone who learned to hear from within and now lives from within. That story doesn't need marketing, it needs embodiment. Just keep showing up. Keep holding the stillness. Keep trusting that your quiet presence is powerfully prophetic, even if no one calls it that. Because I do. I call it holy. I call it weighty. I call it entrusted. And I will use it over and over again. You no longer need noise to be heard. You no longer need motion to matter. You're walking in a new kind of strength. Not loud, but lasting. Not fast, but deep. Not sharp, but steady. And every time you remain in that place, I will meet you in it, because this quiet is not distance, it's authority. And it is mine, resting on you. You've stepped into something permanent, not a moment, not a temporary state, not an emotional high that will fade with time. What you carry now, the stillness, the depth, the discernment, the peace, it's not passing through your life. It's rooted in you. This isn't a detour from who you were. This is the path you were always meant to walk. And now that you've arrived, I need you to understand. You're not going back. Not to the noise. Not to the striving. Not to the self-doubt disguised as humility. I know how easy it is to wonder if this wholeness will last. You've had moments before that felt like clarity, seasons where you believed things had changed, only to watch old patterns return when pressure rose. But this is different, because this time it didn't begin in your feelings. It didn't begin with an external shift. It began in your spirit. It began in the silence. It began in the slow, steady transformation that nobody saw, but I did. And that makes it real. You're no longer building from urgency. You're no longer forming identity in reaction to pain. You're not grasping for answers to prove your worth. You're no longer trying to make your voice loud enough to feel heard. You are walking in quiet authority, in a pace that reflects your new understanding. You don't have to hurry when you know you're already held. This is who you are now, and it will be tested. Not because it's weak, but because it's new. You will encounter spaces that expect the older version of you to show up, the one who over-explains, over-commits, overcompensates. Some people will press against your peace, trying to pull you back into roles that don't fit anymore. Some patterns will try to reappear under pressure, but this time, you'll feel it. And more than that, you'll know how to choose differently. You're not returning to appeasement. You're not shrinking to fit. You are not exhausting yourself for validation. You are now someone who recognizes the cost of abandoning herself and who no longer chooses that path. Not out of defiance, but out of reverence. Because what I built in you in the silence is sacred, and it is now yours to protect. You've walked through the refining. You've let go of the illusion that more noise means more intimacy. You've stopped measuring closeness by how often you hear me speak. And because of that, your life is no longer shaped by emotional cycles. It's shaped by truth. And that truth isn't changing when the weather does. So start walking like it's permanent. Stop preparing yourself for loss. Stop doubting whether this stillness can survive the next storm. It can, and it will, because it wasn't built on shallow ground. It was built in the hidden place. The place where you sat in the quiet and didn't run. The place where you learned to listen without panic. The place where you finally believed I was still good, even when I was silent. That's what made this real. You're no longer trying to prove your connection to me. You're living from it, and the fruit of that will follow you. Not in flashes, but in consistency, in conversations that no longer leave you drained, in decisions made without second guessing, in rest that doesn't require permission, in movement that doesn't ask for applause. You'll feel it in your body. You'll feel it in your language. You'll feel it in the way you respond, not from fear, but from peace. And I will walk with you in it, every day, every decision, every moment when your old instincts try to speak louder than your new rhythm. I will remind you who you are, not with pressure, but with presence, not with noise, but with clarity. not with anxiety, but with grace. This is your identity now. Not tentative, not conditional, not borrowed from the loudest voice in the room. It's yours. Given, sealed, settled. You are not going back to the version of you that questioned everything. You are not returning to the need for constant confirmation. You are not reliving the cycle of doubt and delay. That door has closed. You are no longer becoming. You are. And I am with you, not as a whisper you strain to hear, but as a presence you live from. Not as a force outside of you, but as a rhythm inside your very breath. You hear me differently now. You walk differently now. You hold yourself differently now, and that difference is not fragile. It's final. So don't wait for someone to hand you permission to live like it. Don't wait for applause to validate what I've confirmed in silence. You already have me. And if you have me, you have enough. You're not walking out of the silence, hoping to stay steady. You're walking from it knowing you already are. And that changes everything. Now that the silence has changed you, now that you've learned to walk without needing constant confirmation, I want you to understand something important. You are ready to carry what I gave you. You are no longer someone who searches for purpose in movement. You are someone who reveals purpose by remaining calm, remaining faithful, remaining whole. And here's the truth. Your life is already speaking, even when your mouth is closed, even when you don't say the words people expect, even when all you do is show up, breathe, and stand in peace. That alone is enough to shift something in the atmosphere, not because you try, but because of who you've become, because of what was formed in you when I was silent. You used to think that being used by me required visibility, that it required words, that it meant stepping into some clearly defined role with action and outcomes. But what I'm showing you now is this. Sometimes, the most powerful ministry is carried in presence, not performance. And your presence, refined in silence, steadied in the quiet, anchored in me, is a ministry all its own. You don't have to go around trying to prove you've changed. You don't need to explain how the silence matured you. You don't need to announce that you're different. Just walk. Just live. Just keep doing what you've been doing, staying rooted, listening deeply, not rushing to answer everything. Your consistency will preach. Your peace will clarify. Your presence will carry more truth than 1,000 well-crafted speeches. There are people around you now, and others you haven't met yet, who are desperate for the calm you carry. They won't always know how to ask for it. They may not even realize what's missing in them until they stand near you. But once they do, something will soften. Not because you tell them what to fix, but because you'll show them, without a word, what it looks like to live whole, what it looks like to live from stillness, what it looks like to be full without striving. That's how you'll be a message now, not in volume, but in vibrancy, not in constant explanation, but in quiet alignment. You are no longer just talking about peace, you are becoming it. You are no longer requesting direction, you are moving in it. You are no longer hoping for clarity, you are walking from it. And that walk will be seen. So don't minimize what you carry. Don't tell yourself that because it's not loud, it's not powerful. I didn't train you in the silence just to have you second-guess your presence. I entrusted you with peace that holds. And I'm sending you into rooms that need it, into families that forgot what rest feels like, into systems where urgency has ruled for too long. You won't be the loudest. You won't try to lead. But your spirit will speak. And it will speak clearly. You'll begin to notice it in how people settle when they're with you, in how they ask questions they've never asked before, in how they find language for pain they didn't know they were carrying, in how they begin to breathe slower because you're not rushing. That's not a coincidence. That's ministry. That's the authority of someone who's been refined in silence. And you'll continue to speak, but not to be heard. You'll speak to align, to affirm, to call back. Your words will carry more weight now, not because there are more of them, but because they come from a place that doesn't need validation. They come from a heart that isn't trying to impress me anymore. They come from a soul that's been rebuilt without applause. You're not here to fix the world. You're here to reflect me. And my voice doesn't always shout. My presence doesn't always shake the room. Sometimes I arrive in the calm. Sometimes I heal through the stillness. Sometimes I restore by simply remaining. That's how I'm moving through you now. So let go of the need to be more than that. Let go of the pressure to do something big. You are already carrying something eternal. Every time you choose rest over rushing. Every time you choose integrity over acceptance. Every time you choose silence over performance. That's impact. That's the message. That's me. You are no longer someone who waits to be sent. You've already been sent. Not with a platform, not with a loud campaign, but with presence, with peace, with the kind of stability that changes the air when you walk in. And every time you stay true to that, I'll use it. You'll never know how far it ripples, but you'll feel it, and others will too. So go gently. Go without pressure. Go without overthinking how to say it right. Just go. As you are, full, settled, healed, whole. You don't need to speak loudly anymore because your life is the message now, and it's saying everything I need it to say. This is the part of the journey where many think the silence ends. But the truth is, it doesn't. It changes. It matures. It becomes something different than what you once feared. It transforms from something that once made you question my love into something that now confirms it. What used to feel like distance has become your most sacred proof. I was with you when you couldn't hear me, and now you carry that silence as a sign that I stayed. You no longer see the quiet as abandonment. You see it as the backdrop of transformation. You no longer dread the moments when I don't speak. You trust them. You recognize them. You honor them. Because in the silence I built in you what noise could never touch. Depth, sensitivity, clarity, rootedness. And now it lives inside of you, not as a memory, but as a rhythm. You don't need me to raise my voice, to feel close. You don't need flashes of emotion to feel anchored. You've stopped confusing stimulation for presence. You've stopped chasing moments to prove that I'm near. You know now, I never left. Even when you questioned, even when you doubted, even when you asked me if I had turned away. I stayed. And now you believe it, not because I told you, but because you lived it. This is your strength now. Quiet, steady, full. You move differently. You see differently. You listen differently. Your decisions come from discernment, not pressure. Your relationships are chosen with peace, not panic. You no longer rush to say yes when your spirit is saying, wait. You are no longer afraid of what silence might mean. You understand it. You've befriended it. And now, it speaks through you. You're no longer someone learning how to hold space. You are the space. Space where others find rest. Space where people lower their defenses without knowing why. Space where stillness doesn't feel threatening, but safe. You carry the silence like a sanctuary because you let it become one for yourself first. And that's what makes your life a testimony now. Not the noise you escaped, but the stillness you stayed in. I want you to know how proud I am of you. Not because you made it through, but because you let the silence shape you without becoming bitter. You didn't abandon your faith when the feelings disappeared. You didn't rewrite your identity when the lights went out. You didn't walk away just because I didn't answer quickly. You remained. And now you know what that word really means. Not just staying in a place, but staying in trust. That trust is your inheritance now, and no one can take it. Not circumstances, not disappointment, not confusion, because it isn't built on what happens around you. It's built on the one who walks within you, the one who doesn't leave when your prayers slow down, the one who holds you even when you stop trying, the one who never equated silence with distance, and now neither do you. So live from that knowing. Speak when it's time, but don't rush. Lead when I call, but not to perform. Rest often. Let peace be your default. Let stillness be your signal. Let clarity be your companion. And when others wonder how you got here, tell them simply, I stayed, and so did he. Because that's what happened. You stayed through the storm, through the drought, through the season when nothing made sense and everything felt quiet. You kept walking. And now that silence isn't your shame. It's your signature. It's the mark of someone who doesn't panic when God is still. The mark of someone who no longer fears the quiet because she knows what grows there. You're living proof that silence doesn't mean the story stopped. It means the author was writing a chapter too deep for words, a chapter that couldn't be rushed, a chapter that didn't need explanation, just faith. And now that chapter is complete, not ended, fulfilled. And from here we continue, together, not louder, just closer, not faster, just more fully aligned. So go now, not as someone who barely survived, but as someone who is now defined by peace. Go as someone who no longer questions her place in my heart. Go as someone who doesn't need to explain her journey, only walk it. Go as someone who will remind others God was quiet, but he was still with me. That's the message now. Not in sermons, but in your being. Not in declarations, but in presence. Not in volume, but in weight. You don't carry the silence as trauma anymore. You carry it as testimony. You carry it as rhythm. You carry it as healing. You carry it as a sign that I was there, a sign that you were loved the entire time. A sign that silence was never the end, only the deepening. A sign that you can live with confidence now, even if no one else fully understands, because you understand, and I understand. And we are still walking, always walking, even in silence, especially in silence, because my silence was never distance. It was love, and now that love walks in you. Before you go, I want you to remember something. I'm still here. I never stopped being here. Not when you questioned. Not when you couldn't hear me. Not even when you wondered if I had forgotten your name. I was there, in the stillness, in the waiting, in the quiet place where your heart kept reaching. Subscribe, not to follow words, but to stay near the voice that never left. Let this space be your reminder that even when I seem silent, I am close. I am moving. I am guiding. Come back when you need peace. Come back when the noise rises. Come back to remember that my silence is not a void. It's where I teach, restore, and stay. And I'm still staying with you and always.